2 a.m. net will begin in approximately 5 minutes. KC9UDX net control here. Good evening. This is Kilo Charlie Niner Uniform Delta X-Ray. My name is Matt and I welcome you to the 2 a.m. net. The purpose of this net is to promote the use of amplitude modulation and also to establish this part of this band as a place for AM activity. Traffic for this net will be directed by this net control station. We listen in the AM mode and transmit in the AM mode. I gotta figure out how to revert the camera. Anyway, we'll start out at the top of the list. Frank, W9JCC, it's your turn from KC9UDX.
Okay, Matt, KC9UDX and the net, W9JCC, and good evening, Dale. As far as the power interrupts, I don't remember experiencing anything like that in the last few weeks here. Power's been pretty stable in the last couple of decades, actually. We used to have a lot of power interrupts during storms, but whatever was causing it, excuse me, they evidently fixed it. Got a little background noise in the shack. Dehumidifier is running and causing a little bit of background noise. That might have been why I couldn't hear real well, but I did not hear anybody, in the background there, Matt, before. So I'll turn it back to net control. Everybody's coming in fine. I can hear Dale real good. I didn't get enough meter reading on you, Dale, but Matt, you're your usual 40 over 9, and I'll get a reading on Dale here on the next go around. KC9UDX, W9JCC.
All right, thank you, Frank. And it was interesting because I had just been telling some people that I have never had problems with computers and thunderstorms as long as I've lived here, going on 17 years now. And then this happened. It must have been on the 4th because I wasn't here, and I guess I was at my in-laws that day. And we had some pretty strong thunderstorms that day, and when I got home, I noticed that the power had been cycled because the time on the oven had been blinking, and that's the only thing that would cause that. And it mustn't have been for long because the time was correct, and none of my analog electric clocks were off by very much. But like I say, I did have several computers with solid state memory that the memory became corrupted, which is, I think, kind of unusual. Anyway, next we have Dale. Something else I was going to say here. Now I can't for the life of me remember what it is. But anyway, Dale, AB9DW, it's your turn from KC9UDX.
Okay, Matt, this is Dale, AB9DW. I really didn't copy a heck of a lot of what you said there. I can hear you speaking, but it's just above my noise floor. So I really am having a hard time pulling you out of the basement there. But, and I'm having a little trouble talking to myself because half of my mouth is still frozen from some dental work I had done a few hours ago. So there you go. I did do something crazy. Just yesterday, I picked up an amplifier. So I don't have it in line yet. And it's not going to prove to be any good on 10 meters because it's an Ameritron AL811, which does not include 10 meters. So I'm not sure how long I'm going to hang on to it. I'll probably hang on to it long enough to understand how it works and maybe use it a little bit on 15 and 20. But I'll probably want to have something that I can use on 10 meters. So with that, we'll give it back to net control and good evening, Frank, as well. And Frank, I'm not sure he's been able to hear me, but if not, maybe you can give me the gist of what I said. AB9DW, back to net control.
All right, thank you, Dale. I'll try and speak up here, and hopefully you can hear me better. I apologize. I think I've been speaking a little quiet and a little far away from the microphone. If you pull up the YouTube channel KC9UDX, you should be able to follow the live stream on there, and you'll be able to hear me very well. I can hear you just fine. Your signal here is a 3 out of 10, which I'd have to look back. I don't have all the logs in front of me right now, but I think that's pretty normal. And you sound better than normal. You're well above your audio is well above the noise floor here. And as far as that amplifier, I think that's a little odd that it doesn't cover 10 meters. I'm not familiar with that one, but I can't remember ever seeing an HF amplifier. Now, granted, I don't look at too many of them, but I don't recall ever seeing one that would not do 10 meters. In fact, a lot of newer ones do 6 meters. Mine does not, but mine's not a newer one. Uh, but congratulations on that, and I'll bet you have fun using it when you try it out. It's a different experience using one. It's amazing what a difference turning on that one switch can can do for your contacts. I don't use mine a whole lot, but when I do it, it's a lot of fun to use. And we're at the bottom of the list. Let's see if we have any more check-ins. Anybody wants to check into the 2 a.m. net, come now, please.
November 9, India Papa Alpha.
I got N9IPA pretty clearly. A little bit distorted on the audio, and that might be my fault here. But I know there was somebody else trying to check in. If that somebody else could please try again.
Go ahead, Jay. He's calling out for you. All right, net control, that was Kilo Charlie 9, Alpha Yankee Hotel, J down Antioch.
Roger, I did hear him that time. Just barely. I did get his call sign. KC9AYHJ, welcome to the net, and N9IPA, I forgot to say welcome to you also. But N9IPA, it's your turn from KC9UDX.
All right, well, I just heard about this net tonight. My brother Jay down there in Antioch told me about it, so I thought I'd see if I could hear it, and yeah, just barely hearing it. So it sounds good. It's virtually operating in amplitude modulation, so kind of neat. All right, back to you, N9IPA.
All right, well, welcome to the net. I did not catch your name if you did say it, but I will say that your audio is kind of funny. It sounds like you have a lot of AGC or AVC or something. I'm not sure what to say about that. Of course, if you pick up the YouTube feed, you'll be able to hear yourself. It's whenever you're talking, it's fine, but every time you pause, there's a blast of noise. So maybe that's something that you just have in the background, a fan or something, or maybe there's an AVC setting or something. But if you could please just make one more transmission here and let me know your first name, because I did miss that before if you said it. Go ahead, please.
Okay, yeah, well, I'm not really sure what's going on. And again, I've never really done that AM before. So, yeah, it'd be a lot of trial and error to see what could be causing that. Or if it's the rig itself, I don't know. And the name here is Keith, and I'm down in northwest corner of Kenosha.
All right, thank you, Keith, and welcome from Kenosha. Like I say, your audio or your signal is pretty good. I wasn't paying attention. I neglected to look at the receive meter, but I can understand you very well. It's just a little strange with the audio, but I think we can live with that. Next we have KC9AYHJ. It's your turn from KC9UDX.
He's passing it back to you, Jay. We can get through there. It's NIIPA relay.
right, thank you, Jay. I could make out most of that, so conditions have improved greatly. Last month I could just barely tell you were there. This month your audio is coming through very well. Uh, it's AM, of course, and as we've all been learning here doing this for the past couple of years, AM is a little bit different, and uh, you can have a lot of background noise and have good audio at the same time. And I can pick out most of your words through the background noise, but your audio is pretty good otherwise. And of course, you'll hear that on the YouTube stream. And that was good advice for Keith. I think mic gain might be part of the problem. I didn't even think about that. Uh, I guess I have a whole different way of thinking of things using the transmitter that I have here, which doesn't have a whole lot of options. And I do run very low power here, considering my carrier power is 7 watts. And I can improve that. I think I mentioned that in an email. I can I got a 10 decibel amplifier. The trouble with doing that is putting that in line is another attenuator in my receive path. Now this transmitter and receiver that I use, this Gonset Communicator 4, is not a transceiver. It is actually a separate transmitter and receiver in the same box. So it's possible theoretically that I could open the thing up and separate the transmit and receive, uh, and eliminate the receive attenuation and have the amplifier. But that's that's a little bit of work that I just don't have time for, unfortunately. There's a lot of things I would like to do. If I'm not mistaken, I think this receiver uses 450, roughly 450 kilohertz intermediate frequency, and I've got a Q multiplier that should work with it if that's the case. So I think that would help greatly too. One of the troubles with this receiver is that it's very band. Of course, that means less receive signal from stations, and also it means that sometimes I can hear stuff going on adjacent frequencies, which isn't always a bad thing, but in the case of this net, it's not really helpful. And that brings us to the bottom of the list. Oh, by the way, Jay, thanks for checking in again. And yeah, everything seems to be working better this month. So we're at the end of the list. Do we have any more check-ins for the 2 a.m. net come now, please?
Whiskey Bravo 9. Bravo, Whiskey Papa.
Recognizing Dave, WB9BWP. Do we have anybody else? Hearing none. Dave, WB9BWP, it's your turn from KC9UDX.
Okay. Been here a few minutes, I guess. I could hear Jay. I can't hear Jay. Keith is probably about half and half. And then, of course, Dale was a couple miles away, so there's no problem. And he's got to talk past me to get to you, Matt, so no problem hearing him. And that's about where I came in, I think. I heard Dale mention an amplifier. You may want to talk to Ameritron MFJ, because a lot of amplifiers that were made during the days of that crazy rule that you couldn't cover whatever it was, 25 to 30 or something like that, they had a mod available that they give to anybody with a license. So there may be something simple to do there. Maybe not. I think it kind of varied. Sometimes it was the same as cut a wire kind of thing. Sometimes it was add a handful of parts and go nuts with the band switch. So you may want to check with them and see whatever that, what they might have available for that particular model. And let's see, other than that, nothing special on my list of things here. I heard you mention about your power issue and the computers. A couple of years ago, I say a couple of years for everything because it seems over the last couple of years, I've kind of lost perspective as far as, oh yeah, that was a couple of years ago. No, that was 10 years ago. But I I know it wasn't 10, but we had a whole house generator installed after a year or two of a few major outages here. That one of them resulted in me spending the night in the basement, with wet shoes and a bucket. And the interesting thing about that one was it was caused by a tree that we had called about, and they actually sent an inspector out and said, oh, that's no problem. And it couldn't have been more than 4 or 5 days later that, yeah, that tree was a problem. Unfortunately, we're at the end of a line, and as a result, they didn't get here for like 6 hours, because we were the last stop, and they said, oh yeah, here's the problem. Anyway, since we had the generator put on, of course, we've only had a couple of brief outages, but luckily, all the computers are on UPSs, because the generator kicks in about, I forget what it is, 20 seconds or something. And I haven't experienced any issues with any of them. And so that was a really long answer for a simple question. And with that, I will have to send it back to Net. This is WB9BWP.
All right, thank you, Dave, and no problem with the long answers. This is AM, and I guess on AM we're known for yapping, so no problem. And I can certainly relate to the couple of years thing. I do the same thing. I completely lose track of how many years something has been once it goes beyond a couple of weeks. And you mentioned UPSs. It's my own fault that I had the damage I had to these computers here, which took me a long time to fix, and I've still not got completely straightened out. Because I have a whole bunch of dead UPSs here, and if I would just get ambitious and put some batteries in them, I could eliminate that problem. I have well over 2 dozen UPSs here. I used to have a server farm. I used to do that for a living here. In fact, right where my amateur station is right now used to be where I kept all the servers, and all of those were on UPSs, and everything else in the house was too. And over the years, the batteries died, and they all sit around now. So one of these days, I need to at least resurrect 2 of those UPSs so I can solve most of my problems that I could have here. And you mentioned a whole house generator. I thought a couple of years ago, well, more, yeah, a couple of years ago, I thought about getting one, and then all of our power problems went away. We haven't had a major outage here, like Frank was saying. I can't even remember when. The only time the power ever goes out here, it goes out for a second or two and comes back on. Maybe even milliseconds. It's pretty rare for it to go out for more than a few minutes. I have had a couple of very very local outages. I was the test site for these smart meters, or well, it's not really a smart meter. I guess it's the electronic meter that sends your usage data back to the power company over radio. Now this was a couple of years ago already. I was the test site for this entire area for having one of those. So when they were trying those things out, I had a lot of power outages. And again, a couple of years ago, I burned out a wire underneath the ground here. Tree roots had hit the. I can't remember if it was a neutral or one of the power legs, probably one of the power legs, but the tree root hit that, and I drew a bunch of power and burned out the wires. So I had an outage for a day because of that. But yeah, otherwise it's pretty stable here, and it would be. I'm glad I didn't spend the money back when I thought about it on a whole house generator, because it would have the thing would be sitting out there doing nothing and getting old and rotting, and that's not good. Now I do have backups here in case we do have long-term power outages. What I've got is a couple of very large power inverters for 12-volt batteries. The idea is that I can at least run my furnace, possibly even my water pump, and maybe a few other things, refrigerator or whatever, if I have to, off of car batteries. Now, of course, the idea there, and I probably mentioned that in this net before, is that as the car batteries get depleted, I can carry them out to my car and recharge them and fill up the car with gasoline and whatever. So I pretty much got an endless backup that way, although it's a little bit of work. But we are at the bottom of the list. Do we have any more check-ins for the 2 a.m. net? Come now, please. Hearing I can't complain because we have 6, and that's not a record, but it's a pretty...
Well, maybe not. Anyway, good evening to the new check-ins, Keith and Jay and Dave. Now, I cannot copy Dave. I can hear him and I can tell he's in there. Pick out a word now and then, but he's not moving the S. And Keith is about an S5 and Jay about an S1. The audio on Keith and Jay, the audio itself sounds about the same. It sounds very similar quality, but on Keith, it sounds like there's some kind of a noise in the background, almost like a feedback. And I mentioned, one of the fellows mentioned running 50 watts, and if those are 100 watt rigs on AM, you don't want to run more than 25 watts to get 100% modulation. So if it's a 100 watt rig, your carrier should be about 25 at the most. And Kenosha, yeah, my place very close to my house. I grew up in Kenosha. The address was 2610 46th Street. And right now there is no residence there anymore, but it's the, let's see, be the northeast corner of the new Bain School is about where our house used to sit down there. And Dale on the amplifier, there are a lot of amplifiers that didn't have 10 meters. I think that they had a PC rule on for a while there, and maybe still in effect, that they didn't want them out sold with 10 meters because the CBers would pick them up and use them on the 11 meter band. My Henry that I have underneath the table here has the 10 meters in it, and I got it that way used, but I think if you look at the instruction book, they didn't ship them that way. Let's see, what else? And trying on all the UPSs there. Matt, I don't have any backup here at all. We've been going along here for, I don't know, decades, and no backup so far, nothing too major, so that's the way we've been handling things here. Hopefully we don't have the big one come here and wipe out the freezer and not be able to operate the furnace and so forth. Anyway, back to net control. KC9UDX, W9JCC.
All right, thank you, Frank. I've only been to Kenosha a handful of times. The only thing I really remember about it is that it reminds me of Racine, the way they the way they have the street numbers. They have intersections like 10th and 11th because they have numbers going both directions. But all of my cars came from there. Well, either there or Brampton or Toledo, but the engines for sure came from Kenosha anyway. And I guess I haven't been writing down signal reports for everybody, but Dave, you are a 5 out of 10, and I think that's very consistent for you, and there's less noise than normal, and your audio is very good this month. And here I go talking quiet. I should be talking a lot louder. The YouTube feed cut out again. I'm not sure what causes this. Maybe I should update the YouTube app and they fixed something that they had a problem with, and I'm not aware of it. But it's out, and I can turn it back on, and hopefully it just continues where it left off. I think it does, but it's irritating that happens. I got to keep an eye on that, I guess. And Dale, we'll go back to you again. AB9DW, it's your turn from KC9UDX.
All right, then, Matt. AB9DW here. And also, I experienced that outage here, but yeah, it just restarted. So it looked to me like a buffering issue. Yeah, if it's a cutout, it probably just started right back up again and kept right on going. So it's working pretty well now. So it's kind of interesting. I can't hear you very well on the radio, but your YouTube transmission is working just fine. Yes, indeed. Uh, Frank, I have you at an S3, which is pretty typical, and I can't hear either Jay or Keith. Very faint. I can hear Jay just marginally. He's not moving the S meter at all. Neither is Keith. Dave, of course, is at 9, so very good. It's interesting about the potential mod for that amp, so I'm definitely looking into that. Otherwise, I'm going to have to send that down the road and get something that works a little bit better for me. But yeah, I'm very interested in it. The reason I got it is because I want to learn how to use an amp, and that's really all it's going to be for. Maybe I'll use it on 15 or 20 a few times just to make sure that it's working properly. But my goal for all is to learn how things work, get some experience with it, and then move it along. So there you go. That's kind of me. I'm sort of more an investigative sort of hand versus a guy that's going to be doing a lot of long-term fuel. So there you go. And then also, yeah, we've been considering putting in a whole house generator. We're not there yet, but we had another little power failure here the other day. It didn't last for very long. But one of the problems I have is when the power goes out, I have everything on a UPS except the scanner. Unfortunately, the scanner feeds the little laptop that I use for Broadcastify. So I got a call from Karen, the president at MRC 91, and she said the Broadcastify feed is down. So it took me a couple of seconds to understand what happened because the scanner is kind of hidden behind the laptop. So I didn't think to check on that when the power went down. So anyway, we found out what the issue was, and we got it back up and running again. But yeah, I have to get another UPS because I'm out of plugs on the UPS, and I really don't want to use another multi-plug device plugged into the UPS. So probably time to buy another UPS. Well, there you go. That's what I've got for now, so I'll go back to net control. 89DW back to net.
All right, thank you, Dale. And yeah, having another UPS is always the best way to default, in my opinion. Only because over the years, having the server farm here and at various different places I've worked where they've had servers, it seems once in a while a UPS just goes out for no good reason. And having a second one means, at least in an emergency, if you have to, you can plug in a power strip and keep everything running again until you can get that other UPS running. So that's another reason to do that. You know, I always think about this, how our power is good now, but I see that getting worse in the future. Everybody is pushing everything to be electric, especially cars and other very high power things that in my opinion just shouldn't be powered off of the power grid, but I guess other people have opinions about that. And they've been harping on us for years about how fragile our electric grid is, and how we're going to have another event like we had in the past, where we have a hot summer and we have massive blackouts. Of course, that hasn't happened since, but if everybody all starts plugging in electric cars, those things could get more likely again. But there's other things going on there too. I guess they'll be using the cars for load leveling, which is another kind of scary issue. And as far as the amplifiers, the other guys brought up a point about 10 meters. I completely forgot about that. That is true that the FCC did not allow that. And now whether they've changed back again, I'm not sure. So maybe new ones are the same way. I have no idea. But I think that's a good strategy, Dale, having the amplifier just to try it out. I think in most cases you can get by without one. I certainly, like I say, I hardly ever use mine. There are times when it really comes in handy, but could I do without it most of the time? Yeah. And I don't have a really good antenna here, so I have a really good reason to have an HF amplifier. But even then, it's just not that necessary. Now, everybody says, you know, an amplifier doesn't help if you've got a weak antenna because you don't have the receive. Well, the thing is, if the other guy on the other end's got an amplifier, then you can both hear each other just fine, whether you have good antennas or not. And practice proves that pretty good in my experience. This YouTube live stream does turn out to be very helpful here. I didn't foresee it being this useful, but it seems to be working good. And I guess we are multicasting, something I've always wanted to do on this net. Now, what I wanted to do was be able to use 6 meters AM at the same time, and one of these days I'll get around to doing that, but at least we've sort of sort of achieved that with YouTube. And next we have Keith N9 IPA from KC9UDX. We may have lost Keith. Keith N9 IPA, it's your turn from KC9UDX. Keith, whatever you've done didn't work. I could barely hear you that time. I can certainly tell when you're talking, but I can't make out most of what you're saying anymore. Whatever the noise is on your audio is still there, but your signal has dropped to the point where I can barely copy you. So if you did make a change, maybe undo it, but we will see here. Jay, KC9AYH, it's your turn from KC9UDX.
For cars, they simply tend to charge more at night on non-peak hours, and
right, thank you, Jay. And you're probably right about our power consumption and the power grid. And one other thing to consider is that the power companies aren't sitting on their hands. They are also upgrading the grid constantly. So that we probably don't have too much to worry about. But with population increasing all the time, I guess there's a lot of factors, and well, I suppose the people in charge of that stuff are figuring all that stuff out too. It's not just not just me sitting here at home thinking about it. Uh, I have run into that same situation where you lose one leg of the split phase. Uh, I think that happened here when the conductor underneath the ground burned out. But I probably figured it out before I discovered that the hard way. I remember it very well, part of it because I turned on my air compressor and that's when the power went out. And I thought I burned up my air compressor motor, which I had just spent I think $500 or more replacing. And I was very upset about that, so I started tearing into the air compressor before I figured out that it was only getting one side of the split phase. And I also, in the distant past, have had things fried from low voltage in exactly that same way. In almost 20 years, I haven't had any kind of power problems like that. But prior to that, uh, I've experienced low voltage, high voltage, and all kinds of spikes and lightning and other problems. Now, especially at work in the places I've worked in the past, even where I work now, we had a pretty good power outage. About a month ago, I took out half the industrial park there. But you know, it's not my responsibility where I work now, but in the past where I've worked, I've had to monitor the power. And there were days when the power goes down, the voltage goes down, and days when the voltage goes up. And the power company never really has a good explanation for that. I remember one day measuring our 480 volts at the one place. The 480 was approaching 516 volts before I started turning things off and called the power company, and they did manage to fix the problem. But the odd thing about that was it actually weakened the fuses on the pole by our building when that happened, because after they fixed the problem, about a week later, those fuses started burning out. So we again had serious power problems there. Anyway, Dave, WB9BWP, it's your turn again from KC9UDX.
Let's see, on this round, well, I gotta look and make sure I'm on the right antenna. On this round, both Jay and Keith were kind of iffy here compared to before. What I found interesting was with Frank's signal, I've got an M-squared loop, which is a aluminum tubing kind of loop for horizontal work on 2 meters. That's actually below, a couple of feet below the dual band stick for vertical stuff. And Frank was actually coming in better on the loop today for some reason. On the vertical, it was a lot noisier, and I could barely copy him. But on the loop, I could make out everything he said, and the noise wasn't there. Odd, but hey, that's magic of radio, right? And power stuff, yeah. Well, I spent a few years working at Eaton, where we had our own substation because we made power things. And every once in a while, something catastrophic would happen in one of the labs, and you'd hear a very loud bang, and you'd be without power for half a day. But I guess at least the good thing was it didn't do anything to the rest of the neighborhood. At the Tigler neighborhood. Never mind. And I think I ended up on one phase kind of thing. Like things were strange enough. When we first moved in here in the late 80s, there were constant power problems, and then it got better. And it was really good for a while, but then it got kind of not so good again. And our house and the house next door go off in a different direction than every other house up and down the block. which is always fun to watch when there's a power outage. And when we did have the generator put in, it runs on natural gas, and we had to get a new gas meter and a larger pipe feeding the house from the meter. And the guy that came to do that work happens to live about a block away, or 2 blocks away maybe. And we told him what we were doing and all that, and he said, "Oh yeah, I just put one in too a few months ago because it's not that good around here." He works there, you know that. And that kind of made us at least feel better about the purchase. It doesn't run everything in the house. It's probably I don't know, maybe 2/3 of the house. The price goes up kind of exponentially as you want to get more capacity, but it covers all the important stuff and some of the comfort kind of things as opposed to important stuff too. So we just go in there and tell them, okay, move this one, this one, this one. They switch it over, and every Monday it runs for 20 minutes. Doesn't supply power, it just runs the motor and stuff as part of the normal testing. And once a year the software gets updated, which always seems kind of strange. Have to update the software in my generator. And anyway, I think it's getting late here, so I better turn it back to Nat so we can get one more round. This is WB9 BWP.
All right, thank you, Dave. We had somebody else there trying to get in, I think, while you were talking to whoever that other station is. Come now, please.
Sorry about that. I didn't catch the other station talking. This is Kilo Charlie 9 Yankee Golf Delta. Just wanted to check in late.
KC9YGD. Thank you for checking in. Could I have your first name, please?
First name is Dave. Yeah, I was listening on another radio that only receives AM, and to get the ICOM hooked up and dial in the audio somewhat. These radios don't do too well in AM.
All right, very good, Dave. Welcome to the net. You are a 4 out of 10 on my receive meter. I should also mention Jay and Keith earlier were a 2 out of 10 on my meter. Well, we're at the bottom of the list. Let me see if we have any more late check-ins here. Come now, please. All right, hearing none. Dave, KC9YGD, if you have anything else before I go to the 7-3 round, I'll let you take a turn. Go ahead.
Well, that's about it. I just, heard there's an AM net and thought, oh, that's pretty cool. And I'll listen in on the Kenwood 2 meter, 70 centimeter only. It does receive AM, but does not transmit AM. And I'm like, oh, I want to check in. So, yeah, Jay and I know the guys. Jay's the one who told me about the net, and I did hear them guys in there. And then after that, it was hooking up and stuff. So, yeah, pretty cool. You guys are doing the AM net out here. I didn't realize that AM is even used anymore. So that's very neat. All right, well, I'll stand by and listen. What I can hear, I do have a ways in my receive coming off the power lines or something. But have a good one, guys. 7-3. That's KC9YGD. I'll be listening.
All right, thanks, Dave, for making it here. Your audio is good and your signal is good enough. We're probably there's not hardly anybody using AM anymore, and I know back when I first started talking about doing this, there was really hardly anybody anywhere doing this kind of thing, and that was the main impetus for doing it, I guess. But we're at the bottom of the list, and we're running short on time here, so we'll go back to the top of the list. Frank, W9JCC, it's your turn on the 7-3 round.
Okay, thank you, Matt, and good evening to Dave there, YGD. A good signal up here in Waukesha, Dave. You're about an S7, which makes you number 2 right behind Matt. And I finally got. I put the YouTube on there, Matt, and I could hear the signals there, and I could hear Dave BWP, but the delay is unusually long tonight. Usually it's just a fraction of a second in the past, but it's more like between a half a minute and a minute. It seems like it's quite long, so I've got to keep monitoring on the transceiver to make sure I don't get don't have the you're not turning it over to me there. And I had the ball game on before instead, and so then I managed to leave the ball game on, turn the volume down in the ball game, and got the YouTube audio on there. So that's what we did. And let's see, as far as AM goes, yeah, I do work some AM. Lately, it's just been 40 meter AM, and there's a noontime forum on 40. I get on maybe a couple of times a month using a Johnson Ranger for AM. Won't keep it too long, I guess, as we're getting near the top of the hour here, so we'll say 73s to everybody, and good hearing, pretty good turnout tonight. So back to net control, KC9UDX, W9JCC.
All right, thank you, Frank. Yeah, we had 7 here tonight, and I think 8 is our record. I'll have to look into that. I guess I should know that, and it would be good to know. But yeah, there's quite a bit of AM on HF, and even on 6 meters. But as far as this upper VHF stuff and UHF, there are groups out there, but we're pretty far spread apart. So I guess just about anywhere that you are, anywhere within a couple hundred miles of here, you'll find a group doing VHF AM. But there was a hole in our area here until we started doing this, I think. Especially on 2 meters anyway. Anyway, I should keep my comments short here. Dale, AB9DW, it's your turn on the 7-3 round.
All right, then, Matt, AB9DW here. Yeah, I agree with Frank. When the YouTube broadcast started, it was fine. It's only like a 1-second delay. About 5 or 10 minutes ago, suddenly something happened, and now the delay it's unmanageable. So yeah, you have to keep a monitor going on the radio so you can hear what the current conversation is and pick up when you're supposed to pick up. Anyway, all in all, though, I would say that the YouTube feed is quite helpful. Especially when over the radio waves you can't be heard, or you're not hearing the transmitter. So yeah, this YouTube thing turned out to be really nice. So very handy. All right, so with that, we'll say good evening to everybody. Nice hearing everybody. By the way, Frank, I said S3. It's not S3. It's S6 for you. And Dave, KC9YGG did not move the S meter at all either. So anyway, we'll say 7-3, and hopefully we won't make it so long next time we sign in. It's been a couple of months since I've been able to sign in, so it was nice to be able to do that tonight. So back to Matt Control. Matt, thanks again for running this. Appreciate it. And we'll say good night. AB9DW, back to Matt.
All right, thank you, Dale, and thanks for being here. And next, N9IPA from KC9UDX, Keith, 7-3 round. N9IPA from KC9UDX, 7-3 round. Okay, we may have lost Keith, or he's listening on the YouTube, and there's a delay. So, KC9AYHJ, it's your turn on the 7-3 round. Go ahead, please. All right, thank you, Jay. Unfortunately, conditions have deteriorated to about the point they were. I could tell you're talking, but I couldn't make out most of that, unfortunately. But thank you for coming back this month, and hopefully you can make it next month too. Dave, WB9BWP, 7-3 round.
Okay. Well, 73 to everybody out there. Oh, big net tonight. And all you Illinois guys will have to rub it into the local guys here. Maybe that's one way to get more activity. Anyway, 73 to all. Good job as always, Matt, and good idea of having this net. So, with that, this is WB9 BWP.
All right, thank you, Dave. And you've been pretty regular here in past months, so thanks for being here as always. And KC9YGD, I know you said 7-3 earlier, but maybe you're still listening and want to make one final one here for the 7-3 round. If so, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'm still listening in. My noise level actually dropped down a little bit, so kind of nice. But all right, yeah, I'll check back in here next Tuesday, 8 o'clock. And, yeah, very cool. Good net you guys got going on here, so. All right, you guys all have a good night. 7-3, KC9YGD.
All right, thank you, Dave. We don't meet every week here. Of course, if you want to be here and you can find somebody else to talk to on this frequency, by all means, strike it up and keep things going. But normally we only meet on the second Tuesday of every month. That's mostly due to my time constraints. It's actually actually very difficult for me to even do this once a month, but I do keep doing it, and I'll keep doing it as long as I can. Some closing notes here. I'll have to look into the YouTube issue. Maybe update the app and make sure that everything is clean on the tablet that I'm using. That's pretty single purpose, and I was hoping that would help it, but maybe I've got some issues here, and maybe I've got other network problems, or I don't know. I'll have to look into it. So hopefully I can get that figured out. And one of these days, maybe I'll get something a little bit more interesting on the video besides just pointing the camera at the radio. But it does obviously help for audio purposes anyway. And also, of course, Keith, Jay, and Dave, thanks for finding us and being here. And you other guys, Frank, Dale, and Dave, also, of course, thanks for being here. So it makes it a good time, and of course, we always have a good time here on 2 meters AM. And this concludes the 2 AM net. Feel free to reg chew on this frequency after my transmission. We will meet again on the 14th of August. Until then, this is KC9UDX 7-3, and good night.